preto ilumina porque é preto.
This is a picture of trade working fairly. A picture that shows people from around the world in developing countries that in the past may have been marginalised, but now are benefiting from the partnerships and relationships set up by fair trade organisations like TradeAid to create ongoing sustainable developments and better conditions for the producers and artisans of these products. This picture may look great, but the fact is, it is still only a dream for most people around the world in developing countries. Half the world's population live in poverty. These 2.8 billion people worldwide, who are living on less than $2 a day, could work themselves out of poverty if trade was fair. However, trade is unfair. Take the country of Kenya, for example. In the 1970s, Kenya's future looked bright, with a growing economy and an industry starting to thrive. However, in the 1980s, for the return of aid from rich countries, strict liberalisation was enforced. The government had to reduce support for its farmers, cut tariffs and deregulate markets. And yet when Kenya wanted entry into the WTO in the 1990s, further liberalisation was expected. Cheap, often subsidised goods from richer countries flooded the markets, from shoes and sugar to steel. The result has been fatal for Kenya's young industries, and their vulnerable farmers didn't stand a chance in competition with rich, powerful companies and countries. Moving to the 21st century, Kenya now faces the future with devastated industries, mass unemployment, and a generation without education. More Kenyans live in poverty now than they did in the 1970s. Fewer children go to school, fewer children are vaccinated, and more children die. Around the world, many artisans and producers of products such as cotton, cocoa, coffee, tea and handcrafts are marginalised due to the regulations put in place by large Western governments. This happens because more than 99% of world trade is conducted by the West, through rich governments and large companies and corporations, including the World Trading Organization and the World Banking Organization. They control the way trade is conducted through agreements and rules that they have created to protect their own interests. Not only do these imposed trade regulations allow cheap products to be dumped on poor countries' fledgling markets, they charge high taxes on imported goods so poor countries can only afford to export raw materials like cocoa and cotton. It is the rich who turn these into more valuable products and reap the rewards. Kenya is not alone. Poor countries only account for 0.4% of global trade. This makes them powerless to fight back. Trade rules need to change. The rules need to allow the 2.8 billion people living on less than $2 a day the chance to work themselves out of poverty.
TradeAid began at the beginning of the 1970s as a response to a need that that's Richard and I, originally, and then another group of people saw, to provide markets for producer groups in developing countries who were making handcrafts and who were trying to make a living out of doing this. And we could see that in New Zealand there was a market for their products. It just needed an organisation to facilitate the flow of product. And suddenly, these shops began springing up around the country, and we had a TradeAid movement. And so it began, very small, and grew to what we have today. I think that in the beginning, TradeAid had a charitable purpose, but very quickly, we came to see that this was a matter of dignity for the people who made the products, that all they were asking for was a fair return for their labour, and that TradeAid needed to grow into a sustainable business that would have lasting effects.
There's a new paradigm in trade. Conventional trade seeks to buy low and sell high. that's the way it's always worked. What we're looking to say, that's not a sustainable business model. A sustainable business model is making sure that everyone in the supply chain gets to profit from the sale of that product.
Sagaltam ishan indura kilon qarshi torba qarshi mareetti dakagadi jirti wata komatiin
amasan boda gamone yunani kuntunoni fermode ka gati buna barbade gati sautae iko fojata jega.
What I like about fair trade is, at the moment, a lot of the things we buy in New Zealand, the price we pay doesn't reflect what the people who actually make the goods get, and there's power imbalances in place, and sort of the rich companies negotiating with the poor people producing the goods, and they basically have to accept their conditions, which might not be very good, or or die. So with fair trade, that that's not happening. That everyone's getting a fair deal, a wage that's good enough to live on, and so on, and the money is spread a lot more evenly along the chain.
From when the product is made, I know that the people on the other end of the products I buy are getting a fair wage and are able to have a better life for themselves because of that.
Well, we got into fair trade right from the start when we started roasting, and the things we liked about it was that it basically guaranteed that we knew that the growers were getting a fair price and a guaranteed price, and that basically that money was flowing back through their communities and giving them a better lifestyle really, and we've since found out from having people being brought over as far as for the Fair Trade Fortnight that in fact it is making a difference, and so that sort of was really the key as far as we're concerned.
We're involved in developing product for them for the New Zealand market and giving design ideas, and also accepting their design ideas and their cultural identity within those products. It's important that we are working together on this, and they certainly see us as their marketing arm in New Zealand rather than someone they're just selling to. We share any excess profits we have back with our partners, and over the last few years this has equated to about 10% of the purchases we have made from them. This, I think, reinforces the difference we have in our model, where we're doing our buying decisions and we're making our selling decisions based on the long-term benefits accrued to the producer rather than short-term profits to ourselves.
Involvement with our partners over all of these years has meant huge changes have taken place that we couldn't really have foreseen. We've seen houses with tin roofs, which are not pretty to look at, but they turn the rain away better than thatch does. We see livestock, we see gardens, we see huge advances in communities where people have prevailed upon the local council to cover up sewage outlets, to provide latrines, to provide schools. People are able to send their children to school where they never could before.
So it was through the Oromia Coffee Union we tried to construct these two logs from our fair trade premium, and we got about 600 children going to school last year, and of which covers about 70% of the children in the village. And now we do have 4 classes. We can say that all of them are of the same grade because they have never been to school before.